Good morning. Chodesh Tov. This week is Parashat Mikets. So this shiur is dedicated for refuah shlema to all our chayalim, those who have been wounded, October 7 or anytime after by their enemies, um, and um, refuah shlema to the chatufim, those who have been who are hostages and those who have been returned, and praying for the hatzlacha of the our soldiers and the chatufim for them to come back home, the hostages to come back home, and leilui nishmat, all those who were murdered on October 7, and those chayalim who have been killed um, fighting so bravely, and for the security of all Am Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael and wherever we are. And thank you, Hashem. Tov lehodot laHashem. Thank you, Hashem, for all the miracles you have shown us, you have done for us. And please, Hashem, continue to do so. We still need your help. We cannot manage without your help. Please, Hashem. So, um, we say in Hallel. These days is the 8 day for 8 days of Hanukkah. We say the full Hallel. So um, we we say the full Hallel. So just one moment. Sorry. Um, so in the Hallel we say Mekimi me'afardal me'ashpot yarim evion. That Hashem brings up a person who is very low, very, very low, and he brings him up, raises him. So I would like to um, focus on that theme. In the parasha begins by telling us that Paro had a dream. In the dream, he saw 7 beautiful cows, fat. That's how a cow is called beautiful when she's fat, and um, and afterwards, and he woke up and he went back to sleep. No, sorry. Then there were after that there were 7 skinny cows, and those skinny cows swallowed the fat cows, and they still looked skinny. Then he went to sleep, and then he had this something very a similar dream, but this time it wasn't cows; it was wheat, with wheats that were that each grain was full and good. It looked healthy, and then skinny, where the wheat, the grain was really there was not much of a grain to eat, and it wasn't good. It'd been dried up, and those grains swallowed up the good grains. So Vatipaem Ruhu, that he was shocked. He woke up scared. He didn't know what what's the meaning of this dream. So he right away he called all his cabinet, he called all his magicians, and he wanted to have an explanation. No one was able to explain this dream to Paro. They told him all kind of things. Oh, you're going to win 7 wars, and you're going to lose 7 wars. You're going to have 7 daughters, and all kind of things, but didn't sound right. And but to the point that Paro said, if you don't give me, or you don't find someone who is going to give me the right um, explanation of this dream, then in that case, I am going to kill you all. Once they were threatened, Then the Sar Hamashkim, who had come out of prison, he got up and he says, "Oh, when I was in prison, there was with me the another one of your ministers, and there was a Na'ar Eved Ivri. There was a young man who is a slave and he's a Jew." So Rashi and right away the Midrash Tanhuma and many Midrashim right away they look at this. So what do you mean Na'ar Eved Ivri? This Na'ar, this young man, actually helped you out. He actually explained your dream when you were in prison, and this is how now you speak to him. Why are Chachamim talking like that? Because when he said Na'ar, Eved Ivri, Na'ar, he didn't say he's a young man. He meant to say he's foolish. You can't really listen to what he says. Eved, he's a slave. And Ivri, on top of it, he's a Jew. What he meant to say when he said these three words, Na'ar, Eved, Ivri, he meant to say that this man, he's foolish. You cannot listen to whatever advice he's going to give. He's a Eved, he's a slave. That means a slave. Even if you're going to listen to him, you cannot make him anything um, out of him because he's a Eved, he's a slave. And according to the laws of Mitzrayim, a slave must stay a slave all his life. And on top of it, he's a Jew. So there's nothing doing with this young man, right? And that's why right away Rashi says, Arurim haresha'im, she'afilu hatova she'osim mitkavnim lera'a. And Rashi says here, cursed are the reshaim, the wicked ones, because even if they want to do something good, like a favor, they do it in wrongly. They do it so it looks bad. It doesn't really. It's not even a favor. Instead of saying yes, this young man helped me. He explained to me my dream, and everything came out the way he explained it. No, he just all what he said is just spoke really badly about Yosef. So here Chachamim explain like this: Mitoch Yeush shalach leavi et Yosef. Out of he was so desperate. Paro was so desperate for um, a proper explanation to his dream, because he really felt that this dream is not just a dream. There must be a meaning to his dream, and he said, "Bring me this young man." They had to take him out of prison. The Midrash tells us how that night, the night before, while Paro was dreaming, Hashem sent a malach. I think it was Elio Navi or Malach Gabriel. I can't remember which one it is of the two. That sent him to actually teach Yosef all 70 languages. That was very important. We're going to see soon why. Which is really impossible to learn all 70 languages all in one night. Obviously, that was a night of Rosh Hashanah, Vaiskor Elokim, it was a night of Rosh Hashanah. Hashem remembered Yosef. It was time for Yosef to come out of prison. That's it. This is it. He was not supposed to stay, not even a minute longer than what Hashem had decreed. So, Paro says, "Bring me this young man." So they went, they gave him a bath, they shaved him, cleaned him up, gave him clean clothing. Cannot come to the king when you're not clean, when you're all dirty. Because remember, the prison was not what we know now, a prison. Prison those days was really a hole in the ground, deep inside, where there was no light. There was just dirt. Whether you want it or not, you got dirty. All right. And so the Rabbi Yeshua says, Ben Levi says, Mitoch tzara ba'a revaha. Out of this great um, pain and trouble that Yosef was, that he was in the pit, right, in prison, came the relief, came the revaha. Mitoch afela ba'a ora. Out of the darkness came the light. ומתוך ניבולם בושתם של הצדיקים באה רוממותם. It means that the tzaddikim, and this is a pasuk from Mishle, and that says that when tzaddikim are insulted or things happen to them that are um, not really just, it wasn't fair, it wasn't something that should have been done to a tzaddik, but Hashem bring them up. Hashem does not let them suffer, or maybe they're going to suffer for a while, but there's going to be an end to that suffering. Suffering, and in Mishle, Shlomo HaMelech said, "Im navalta." Navalta means bishu. They or takfu otcha. If they embarrassed you or someone really spoke very harshly to you, behitnase'eh, keep yourself, keep your head high. Don't don't answer back to that insult that you got. Vim zamota, but if you thought of maybe answering, right, and give back uh, harsh words because of what they said to you, yad lape, sim yad lape shelcha, al ta'ane, don't answer. So Shlomo HaMelech says, it's better off, you are better off when someone insults you, just keep quiet. Because Hashem is going to take care of it. And we see, and the Midrash Tachuma brings the example of Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, mitoch nivulam romemutam, that they were thrown. Nebuchadnezzar at the time was the king, and he said everyone has to bow down to the idol. They refused. They were thrown in the fire, and all three came out. They all came out alive. They were not burnt. So what happened to them? Not only that they came out alive, but they even Nebuchadnezzar realized of this great miracle that happened to them. So he made them into sarim, into ministers of his cabinet, in his government. Hashem saved them. And we see the same thing with Daniel. Daniel was also thrown um, into a cage full of lions, and for sure those lions were starving, right? They weren't exactly just going to be his pets, and he was thrown into the lion. A cage full of lions, and again it was the same thing, because Nebuchadnezzar said no one is allowed to pray except to the Avodah Zarah, to the idols, but Daniel refused. He still had continued praying to Hashem, and informers went to the king and told the Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel is praying to Hashem. So they took Daniel and they threw him in the cage with the lions. And again, another miracle happened. But what happened after that miracle? Again, Nebuchadnezzar realized that it was a miracle. So he made Daniel a minister in his government, but not just any minister. He really had a very high level job in the government. And we see the same thing again with Mordechai Tzaddik. So it says that he came lavush sak. He was wearing mourning clothing, and he had ashes on his head, and he was crying, and he sat by the gate of the king, right, because of the gezerah of Haman, because of the decree of Haman to destroy the Jews. And a few pasukim later, Hashem made a miracle. And what happened? Umordechai yatsa milifnei hamelech bilvush malchut. And we learned that Mordechai came out um, from the gate of the king, and he was wearing the king's clothing. And at the end of the Megillah, we learned that he was actually the top of all ministers of the entire government of Achashverosh. And here we see the same story happening with also with Yosef. So really, like it's like Yosef really started this, and we see throughout the generation how people have been um, either put to shame or have been thrown into fire or given any kind of uh, imprisonment, but later on they became very important people. In Tehillim we say, עינו בקבל רגלו, ששמו שרשראות ברגליים של יוסף. They, when Yosef was brought out, he had chains on his legs, but not only on his leg, but על נפשו. It means that his entire body, that's how they treated slaves. His entire body, on his body, he had chains. He had a chain around his neck and a chain around his entire body. And he felt as if his nefesh, his neshama, is also um, tied into those heavy chains. And what happened to Yosef? Once he stood in front of Paro and he was able to explain the dreams, Naasa Sheni Leparo. He became second to Paro. Second to Paro. So the obvious question is, what zechut did Yosef have to go from being the lowest of the lowest in jail and be raised up overnight, literally overnight, to become Sheni Lamelech, the vice king? So for us to see this, we have to look at what did Yosef say. Yosef listened to Paro. Paro actually changed a few details of the dream when he was telling the dream to Yosef. But Yosef, before he even started, Yosef understood that. But before he even started to explain the dream, what did Yosef say? בלעדיי אלוקים יענה. לא אני יכול לעזור לך. I am not the one who can help you, Yosef said. I'm not the one who can give you the right and the proper explanation to your dream. It's really, it all comes from Hashem. Everything comes from Hashem. So because Yosef, תלה הגדולה בבעליה, because Yosef actually said, I know nothing, it's all from Hashem. Hashem is the one who's going to help me to understand it, not me. So it means that Yosef actually, really, he made himself like zero. His level of anava was actually very high. He had no ga'ava at all. No, he wasn't proud at all. Nothing. All he knew, he said, me, I don't know anything. It's only Hashem who can help you. It's only Hashem who's going to give me the idea to understand what you're telling me, Paro. Hashem is the one who's the Hagadol. Hashem is the one who's great. Hashem is the one who really holds the key to your dreams. So Hashem says, אתה לא רצית להתגדל בעצמך? Hashem says, you didn't want to take the greatness for yourself. He could have said very easily, listen, yes, of course I understand. I understand, yes, tell me. I understand dream. I know how to explain them. And Hashem will help me. But he took nothing, no greatness for himself at all. He effaced himself completely. At this moment, חייך שעל ידי כך תעלה לגדולה ולמנוחה. Hashem says, because of this, you are going to become second to the king. Rabbi Tzadok, הכהן מלובלין, זכר צדיק לברכה, says like this. Says like this. Usually, it really works out most years that it is a Vayeshev or Mikets, that these parashiot they fall on Chanukah. Is this really just um, a coincidence that this parashiot? We learn about Yosef being in the pit, Yosef suffering so much and for so long, and then overnight he becomes second to the king. Not just he's freed, but he becomes second to the king. How is this possible, right? So Rabbi Tzadok says like this: at the end of Parashat Vayeshev, we learn that the wife of Potiphar, right? She was after Yosef. She wanted Yosef to marry her, and Yosef says to her, "I can't. How can I sin against Hashem? Your husband, my master, has given everything in my hands except for you. I cannot. This is not possible." And she used to invite her friends, and she used to tell them, look at my slave. Look how handsome he is. And it says, the Midrash says that actually her friends, they would be like peeling an apple or whatever. They had knives in cutting a fruit, and they would be looking at him, and they were so intent, focused on looking at how handsome Yosef was, that they actually cut their fingers and did not even notice, because they were so focused on Yosef. And every day she would come and tell Yosef, I want to marry you. I want to marry you. And every day Yosef said, no, no, no. Until the day that she planned, she pretended to be sick. It was the day, a holiday for the Avodah Zarah. Everyone left, and she said, oh, no, I'm not feeling well. I'm staying home. So no one was home, but Yosef came to do his work as usual. And that's when she grabbed him and she said to him, now you have to marry me. Yosef almost failed. That was a very difficult test. Yosef almost failed. It was Hashem who actually came and helped him. And he saw, in his mind, he was seeing his father in front of him. And that's when Yosef ran away, leaving his coat in her hands. And when later on, she accused him of really coming onto her, and Yosef was put in prison. Even though the truth was known, Potiphar found out that his wife was lying, but he wasn't going to put his wife in prison. So, of course, obviously, he put Yosef in prison. So, Yosef was in prison for 10 years. And then that's when, after the 10 years, they there were the Sar HaMashkim and Sar HaTabachim, the baker and the butler of Paro. They had their dreams. He helped them out. And Yosef said to the butler, you're going to go back to your job. Please, when you speak to Paro, remind me, talk to Paro about me. So that, because I've been in prison for no reason. And I have been really kidnapped. I'm not a slave by birth, right? But as we know, Because of these words, Yosef was still kept in prison for 2 more years. So for 12 years, Yosef was in prison. So if we look at the time that Yosef was in prison, Chachamim really split the time 10 years plus 2 years. Okay. Rabbi Tzadok brings the midrash and says like this. This midrash is about is on Sefer Iyov, on the book of Iyov. That there it says Hashem sam ketz lachoshech ויודע הקץ של כל דבר. Hashem sam ketz lachoshech. The midrash says Hashem put an end to darkness. Hashem knows everything, and He's the one that He decides at the right time to put an end to the choshech, to the darkness. והשם יודע כמה זמן החושך יימשך. And Hashem knows how long this darkness is going to last. So the obvious question is, מה זה חושך? What is this darkness that the Midrash is talking about? Midrash is talking about היצר הרע, השטן. The Satan, the יצר הרע, he's called חושך. He's called darkness. שכל זמן שיש רע בעולם, יש מוות. Because as long as there's choshech, as long as there is darkness, as long as there are terrible things going on, murder and corruption in the world, there will be death. The Yetzer Hara, he's like a big, and he's compared to a big black stone. And that big black stone gives a shadow, a black shadow to the world. Until when then? Hashem yasim ketz lara lachoshech hazeh. Until Hashem decides now is the right time to take away this blackness, to take this ra, these terrible things that are going on, this Satan who is making things happen. Hamidrash Omer, the Midrash tells us, so too that's how it was actually in the life of Yosef. That Hashem took Yosef out of the darkness and brought him out into the light. Took him out of the pit of the suffering and brought him out to the light and gave him a life that was respectable, a life that he was free, a life that he could live his own life the way he wanted. And what did Yosef want? If we think for a moment, Yosef at the time when he was sold to Mitzrayim was only 17 years old. Mitzrayim was at the time the most corrupt place in the world. Most corrupt place in the world. It was a superpower, but at the same time, it was the most corrupt place in the world. Murder, corruption, bigotry, thieves, you name it, it was happening there. Yet Yosef, at 17, he checked himself every moment that he lived there. And then to make matter worse, he was thrown in prison for something he didn't do. For something he did not do for 10 years, he suffered. But then the Midrash tells us something wonderful about Yosef. Yosef has really had two choices, right? Either sit and cry every day. For what kind of a mazal is this? What is this? What kind of a life is this? Of misery, of being the lowest of the lowest in those days. A slave had no right at all. And he was at the bottom of all uh, 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 of all slaves, or could he really raise himself, hold his head high? And that's what Yosef did. So Rabbi Tzadok says like this, that the 10 years that Yosef spent, those 10 years that he spent in prison falsely, right, for being accused falsely, that was a punishment for speaking lashon hara about his brothers to his father. That they had eaten ever minachai, that they had taken a limb, like a leg of an animal. They cut it off when the animal was still alive, and they ate it. And that's not what it was. It was misunderstood, and that they had married women who were Kenaanim, which is also not the truth. He also misunderstood. And here, really, Yosef teaches us something to be careful. When we see something, we have to make sure and to clarify that whatever we see is actually what we think it is. And if we cannot clarify it, then be quiet. Don't say anything, right? And Hashem punished Yosef midah keneged midah. Hashem punished him midah keneged midah. You were talking about the freedom of your brothers, that they were doing something wrong, so your freedom is taken away from you. So during these days, these 10 years, what did Yosef do to help himself? One can just despair and just not know what to do with himself anymore, right? Yosef realized that if all this is happening to me, then I have got to do teshuvah. I have got to do teshuvah. All the lashon hara that he did, he knew, I have to stop that. That is not something that is leading to anything constructive, anything good. So he worked on his lashon hara, and he worked on his midot to see the good in other people and on himself also. Not just see the good in other people, but to be a better person. He held his head high. He became a better person. And for that, it took him 10 years of his life, to the point that he actually was able to destroy his Yetzirah. Then he was chofshi, he was free of the Yetzirah. Just as Rabbi Yehuda Halevi says, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, he wrote many poems and many beautiful, and some of his poems we actually say in Tefillah and Rosh Hashanah. And he says, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi says, who is a true free person? מי שמתגבר על היצר הרע שלו. A person who is able to actually overcome his יצר הרע, he is a true free person. It's not just freedom of speech and freedom of, I don't know, I do what I want. No. Or I say what I want. No. That's not freedom. That's not called freedom. Freedom, according to the Torah, means someone who is able to overcome his yetzer hara, the Satan. He's fighting it and choosing to do the right things and not follow the yetzer hara. So, okay, so for 10 years, Joseph was in prison. So why did he stay 2 more years? Why? Okay, so יוסף רצה לעקור, להוציא מן השורש את היצר. Yosef realized, okay, יצר הרע knows that I am stronger than him. I'm able to fight him. However, Yosef knew he had to take off one more step to really be rid of this Yetzirah. He had to really uproot the Yetzirah from the shoresh, from the root. And what is that shoresh? A shoresh al Yetzirah was the Etz Hadat, the fruit that Adam and Chava ate from. And that what brings a person to do a sin. It wasn't just eating. And um, it wasn't just eating. That it was really a mindset. It was a mindset that brings a person to sin. For that, Yosef had to actually change that mindset that he would not sin. Because that mindset of the Etz Hadat, of the fruit that they ate, Adam and Chava ate, that put in a mindset into their minds and into the mind of every human being on earth. That mindset that's what really gives us the desires and wanting to just one pleasure after another. That by itself, the wanting a pleasure by itself is not really a sin, but it can bring to sin. And that's what Yosef was working on that mindset. So the first 10 years, Yosef was busy doing teshuvah, refining his character. And in the last 2 years, he spent hours and really fought and worked very hard on his midot so that he would remove completely the Yetzirah. He would actually uproot the Yetzirah completely to the point that Chachamim tell us, יוסף הגיע לדרגה הכי גבוהה שבן אדם יכול להגיע לשלמות. That Yosef reached the level, the highest level of being complete, of completion, of being perfect that a human being can achieve. So once he had achieved that level, that was it. There was no reason for him to stay anymore in prison. And that's why overnight, keheref ayin, overnight, literally overnight, salvation came and he was saved and taken out of prison. Rabbi Tzadok Omer says that actually Yosef, the whole story of Yosef, has a big lesson for us to remove from us the Yetzirah, because if we don't fight it, we're only going to be pulled by it and we're going to be following it, and that would increase the darkness instead of the goodness in the world. So how do we do this? And Rabbi Tzadok says the only Torah Tavlin, the only ingredient, the only way for us to fight it is by learning Torah. By learning Torah, allowing the Torah learning to go inside us, inside our heart, that will help us to fight the Tzahara, learning about the halachot, learning what to do, knowing what to do, then we are not going hand in hand with the Yetzirah. And how does this tie up with Hanukkah? Because this is what the Yevanim wanted to do. They didn't want us to learn Torah. Because with the Torah, a Jew knows that he can be free of his Tzara, he can be free of his pleasures and desires. But this would go against the culture of the Greeks. But that's what they wanted to destroy. We say in Ala Nisim, in Birkat Hamazon, and in Amidah 18, we say Leshakram Toratecha. Leshakram, it means to make us forget the Torah. That's what the Yevanim wanted. So if we look at the shoresh, the root word of leshakram is shakach. Shakach means to forget. But if we turn around the letters of shakach, we have choshech, darkness. So the story of Yosef and Chanukah, we celebrate Chanukah and we are very happy. But the Jews, for 50 years, the Jews suffered. Many young women refused to get married because before they could get married, they had to go and spend a night with a general or a captain of the Greek army. So the Jewish girls refused to get married. And therefore, many men could not get married either. Kohanim could not get married. Not just Kohanim, any men. And it was a huge problem. And they suffered a lot. Many families died because of what the Yevanim wanted, what the Greeks wanted us to do. And unfortunately, many Jews went after the Yevanim. Thanks to the Maccabees, thanks to the Hashmonaim who saved us, and thanks to Yehudit, the daughter of the Kohen Gadol, who helped us. And she was the one who did something so unusual by killing Ali Forney, who was the top general of the army. She killed him, and then she came back with his head in a basket, and she said to the Jews, "Now go, look, Hashem has helped me. Now go and fight the Yevanim." So the story of Yosef, the story of Chanukah, both of these stories, we know that Torah doesn't teach us there's nothing in the Torah that is extra. And so the story of Yosef is not extra. It's because it's there to teach us something. And Hanukkah is also telling us something. What is it? Or HaTorah megaresh et hachoshech. The only way to push away the choshech, the darkness, is only through the light of the Torah. And we can really understand that very well with what's going on in the world, with all the how we see we are like kisa ben shiv'im ze'evim. We are like a little lamb surrounded by 70 wolves. These days that are so hard, that our friends are so few, but we know one thing, that with the Torah, with the Chesed, with the Tzedakah, with ahavat chinam, with loving each other, with supporting each other, that's how we can push away the choshech. So Hashem should show us soon, B'ezrato Yitbarach, Hashem should show us soon the light of Mashiach.